Hello, everybody, and welcome, and happy World Kindness Day to you all. My name is Rich Fernandez from the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute. I'm so happy to be here today. We're also joined by beloved and esteemed teacher, Jack Kornfield, and I will provide an introduction in a moment, but we always like to invite you, our participants, to just share with us while we're all arriving here in Zoom, where you're joining us from. Usually it's folks from all over the world. So as you're joining here, please let us know where you're from. Nova Scotia, hello, and Tijuana, Germany, Maryland, US, Serbia, wonderful, Michigan, Ontario, Canada, beautiful. Please let us know where you're joining from. Montana, Austria, Hawaii, Germany, Switzerland, Mexico, Monterrey, hello, Bend, Oregon, Sweden, Tokyo, Estonia, hello, Zurich, I see Canada, Bavaria, wow, so many. Please let us know where you're joining from. Colombia, Colorado, number of people from Germany, hello. Just if you could chat us where you're joining us from. It's always so nice to welcome everybody from the global community. So I love this. Yes. Hello, Czech Republic, a Brazilian in London. Wonderful. Okay. Oh, yes. One of our teachers too. Yes. Hello. Hello. So welcome again. This is World Kindness Day, and we're just looking at the chat bar, seeing where we're all joining from. I see Spain and Bangkok, Italy, Berlin, Germany. So welcome everybody. So today is World Kindness Day. Every November 13th is World Kindness Day. And the purpose of World Kindness Day really is to take the opportunity on a day like today to cultivate kindness towards oneself and to others and to the world as a practice. And the purpose of cultivating kindness really is to help connect with this sense of kindness and compassion, which really binds us together and connects us. So we are so thrilled that you could join us today and from all corners of the world, as we see on the chat bar, and let us know again where you're from, if you could. And we are so delighted and honored today to be joined with Jack Kornfield, who will be in conversation with us. Hello, Jack. Hello, dear friend.
Hi, Rich. Very happy to see you and glad to be here with all the SIYLI people.
Hello. And if you, many of you will probably know Jack from his amazing writings, dozens of books. And Jack is an esteemed and beloved mindfulness and meditation teacher for many, many years now, one of the foremost in the world, I would say. So we're just so thrilled to have you here, Jack. And we wanted to be sure to have a couple of different opportunities here to engage in this topic of practicing kindness. So we have a little bit of a flow for our time together, which is that we'll be in brief conversation together, you and I, for the first part of it, perhaps 15 minutes or so. And then, Jack, you are going to offer a kindness cultivation practice for the participants. And then we'll open it up to Q&A from you all. So you can then chat in your questions directly to Jack, and we're also live streaming this across social platforms, so we'll be getting questions from there as well. So that's the format. And again, welcome everybody, and let's just get right into it then. So Jack, in terms of a conversation on kindness, I think one of the first things I wanted to invite consideration of is the idea that we live in such a complex world, and there are so many challenges, and they seem to be so interrelated and compounding, from climate change to social division, social justice movements, COVID, the increasing wealth gap. I mean, there are so many challenges we face as humanity now. And so within that, why does practice kindness make sense? Why does practicing kindness make sense from your perspective?
Well, I see our conversation today really is a reminder to people who are listening. There's nothing new about talking about kindness. It's been there forever. But we need the reminder, we need to help one another in some way, especially with all the kinds of modern suffering and problems. But the whole game isn't new. We as a species have lived through hurricanes and tsunamis and pandemics and tornadoes and earthquakes and so forth over thousands and thousands of years. And there's something in us that knows not only how to survive, that's in your genes and in your DNA, but we also know how to take care of each other. And there's something extraordinary that can happen when difficulties arise. I think of the huge floods that happened in Houston from one of the hurricanes in Texas, and people on their roof stranded with their children or their dogs or whatever. And then I think the name for it was the Cajun Navy. I don't know if you remember, but there were
the Houston floods, yes, and of course Katrina.
There were all these people putting their boats in their airboats and driving from Louisiana and Michigan, Mississippi, and all around, just coming together to get the people off the roofs, to save people, to help them. And that's the deepest response that we have in ourselves. Mm-hmm. You know, in our DNA, maybe we were long ago living as tribal people, if you will, separated from one another and rightfully wary of one another. So that can easily be triggered. But as deep as that is, the true sense of connection is even deeper. And in this time, I think of my, beloved friend and mentor and esteemed kind of visionary Joanna Macy, who writes, there's a song in each of our hearts that wants to be sung, even in these difficulties. And maybe it's the song of a requiem for that which is dying in the world, or maybe it's a joyous song of rebirth. But we have to sing. We have to bring ourselves to it. And in a way, these circumstances, because we see it all interconnected, are almost orchestrated to bring from us our moral strength, our care, our kindness, our creativity and courage, as if that is being pulled out of us, not just as individuals or small bodies of us, but the body of the earth, because that's who we are. The truth is that we're not these separate beings. Every breath you take is breathed by the people and the animals and the worms, and every being around you is breathing with you, in the trees and the plants. And you exist in this sea of connection. And then we have this, it allows us to operate. We have this sense of separation. But some other part of us knows that that's not the end of the story, that that's helpful to guide our lives to live in a somewhat separate way, but it's not true. And so all these practices of compassion and loving kindness and forgiveness and so forth are a reminder to the heart of who we really are and what matters to us most. Can I tell you a story?
Of course, please.
This is actually, I'll read you a story. It's the story of a nurse in a clinic, and it's 8:30 a.m. This elderly gentleman comes in to get some stitches removed, and he's part of a long line of people, but he says, please, can I be seen earlier first, because I have to get to another appointment. So they sit him down, and the nurse starts to work on him and asks if he has another doctor's appointment. And he said, no, he needs to go to the nursing home to eat breakfast with his wife. So she said, I inquired about her health. And the elderly gentleman told her that she'd been there for a while and that she was the victim of Alzheimer's disease. And I asked, well, would she be upset if he was a bit late? And he replied that she no longer knew who he was, that she had not recognized him for 5 years now. Quite surprised, the nurse said, and you still go every morning, even though she doesn't know who you are? And he patted her hand and said, she doesn't know me, but I still know who she is. And there's something in us. It doesn't matter if the world forgets in some ways, and there's violence and there's people who are sowing division, and that also happens. That's part of being human. But underneath it all, we know something better. And so it's not just an aspiration. The Dalai Lama says, my religion is kindness. And he doesn't say it as a philosophical religion. He says, this is how I want to move through the world. I want to remember who she is, who you are, to see with those eyes of tenderness.
That's so beautiful, Jack. Thank you. And you touched on something there that I wanted to ask you about, which is when it becomes difficult at times, really hard to practice kindness, to extend kindness, right? So for example, when faced with perhaps real threats or real violence or harm, I was listening the other day to some of the families of the victims of the shootings that happened in Paris. And some of the perpetrators are on trial now in France. And I was hearing that some of the families were in a space of forgiveness towards, some of the perpetrators, and others couldn't. So it's just such a powerful and complicated question. What is the role of kindness when facing injustice?
Well, of course, the most important thing is to do what we can to prevent suffering, no matter what it is. And forgiveness doesn't mean we condone what happened. In fact, forgiveness asks that we stand up and put our bodies on the line or in the way of harm to ourselves or others. So it's not forgive and forget. But it's a movement of the heart to say, in spite of the suffering, in spite of the harm, as I guess it was Martin Luther King, but Jr., but might have been Booker T. Washington, saying, never let them bring you down so low as to hate them. That we don't allow that to take over our heart. And the place that I saw and learned maybe the most, there's so many in my life. I worked with Mahago Sananda, who was a Cambodian monk and a dear friend who became the head of Cambodian Buddhism, in the refugee camps during the Khmer Rouge time, when there was this genocide there and millions of people killed. And we were together, we lived together in this forest monastery, and then he wasn't killed. All 19 members of his family were executed. The temple he trained in was burned, the village, many people were tortured. So he went to the refugee camps because he was one of the elders that survived. And I was with him, and he asked the UN, here's a camp with 50 or 100,000 people who had lost everything. Can he open a little temple in the main square, just a roof and a little altar and things? Got permission. And that morning we went through the camp ringing a bell to announce the opening. And the Khmer Rouge Underground said, anybody who goes, when we get back to Cambodia, you will be shot. So we didn't know if anybody would come. But 25,000 people poured into that square. And he sat there, having lost everything, family, village, community, people he loved. And I thought, okay, what can he do? And you looked out, and there was a grandmother with his 2 surviving grandchildren, or an uncle and 1 niece, and the faces of tremendous trauma. And he put his hands together and he began to chant in Pali, like Sanskrit and Khmer, words they hadn't heard in some years. He began to chant one of the first verses in the Buddhist teaching: hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. This is the ancient and eternal law. And he chanted it over and over and over. And pretty soon, with tears streaming down their face, 25,000 people began to chant with him: hatred never ends by hatred, but by love alone is healed. After that, he led peace walks, bringing people back into Cambodia for 15 years, nominated for the Nobel Prize all these times. And all along, he got people to chant that chant and realize that we have to start over, that there's no other way to peace or love, but actually embodying it no matter what's happened.
So beautiful. Thank you. Yeah.
So we know this somewhere in us, and it takes courage and all that other stuff. I get angry. People, you know, I've seen, because I'm in the spiritual industry and I get to be close to the swamis and lamas and mamas and whatever, you know, we're human. We get angry, we get upset. And when things that we love get threatened, it rouses all that. And that's right in some way. Can we hold that also with the deepest understanding of kindness, that we're all in it and we're all lost at certain times? James Baldwin writes, he said, I imagine one of the reasons people cling to their hate and ignorance so stubbornly and all the suffering they cause is because they sense that once hate is gone, they will be forced to deal with their own pain. And if we see with the eyes of kindness and mercy and empathy and compassion, we're all in it together. It's us. And we're all playing our part somehow in this dance. And sometimes because the suffering is so great, and really underneath it, the fear is so great, that we cause tremendous harm to one another. The solution to that harm, hatred, is never ends by hatred, but by love alone is healed. So I wonder, my dear friend, just because of the menu you set out of time, whether we might watch this video from the Cleveland Clinic that I think is one of the most inspiring.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll share this now with you. Here's this wonderful video. Thank you. So beautiful. Jack, I know that, I mean, that video, you know, I feel in my heart. And kindness and compassion is also something we know we can cultivate on a daily basis, moment by moment even. So perhaps we can take a moment in this part of it to do that together with you.
Yes. Yes, that's the beautiful thing. Not only do we know this, I watch that video and I tear up because it reminds me what I really care about and how we're all in it together. And they mixed. It's a hospital, so of course people are going because they're in trouble in many ways, and sometimes it works out well, and sometimes it does not. And this is our human incarnation. This is our lot. How will we move through this world? And it turns out in the end, there aren't many questions to ask at the end of life. Did I love well? Is really one of them. Maybe did I give myself to the world, the gifts that I have? Did I bring them into the world? Did I care? But these are the most human of all questions. And the beautiful thing, and been known for thousands of years, is that these qualities of kindness and loving kindness and compassion, empathy, they can be trained, they can be reminded. Our whole heart and mind and nervous system can be tuned and reawakened to make it more alive for us. And if you do a little bit of this practice every day, and you can do it driving or walking or with others, it starts to change you. So let's do maybe 10 minutes or so of a loving kindness practice. And you'll hear the pedagogy of it. It involves a inner recitation in your mind, a visualization, sometimes the feelings that come. And because many people find it hard to feel kindness for themselves at first, a kind of unworthiness, it's really good to start where it's easiest, which is often not for oneself. So we'll do that. And know that it can bring up everything. You can feel the distance from love. You can feel that you're still angry or hurt about something, or it can feel mechanical. And then the question is, what do I do when that arises? And you hold that with love too. That's all, because it's all us. It's all part of us. So let your eyes close gently wherever you are, unless you're driving. And settle yourself. Feel your seat here on the earth. This human being born into a remarkable globe, and a wild time where we're connected in some ways as never before, outwardly. And now can we also create those interconnections to heal ourselves and the climate and the planet and all that's called for us. Take 2 or 3 long, deep breaths just to release whatever obvious tension you can. And now in this simple practice, begin in whatever way works for you. Let yourself think of, remember, picture someone that you care about a lot. Someone where the relationship is not complicated, a simple one. And as you picture and vision, remember, think of this person that you care about, where it's easy. You see them in your mind's eye or your heart, and feel the natural sense of loving kindness and care you have for them. And then begin whispering in your heart and your mind, a few words of intention, of kindness, your wishes for them. May you, dear one, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be safe and protected. We want this dear one to be safe. May you be well and strong in body and mind. Let yourself also be aware of the measure of sorrows, the struggles in this dear one's life, as in all human lives. And feel how they too have the weights of the world as part of their journey. And may you hold your struggles and difficulties with great compassion. And may you be happy, truly happy. And feel what it's like as you gaze in this person in your heart and mind and offer these well-wishings, safe and protected. And filled with loving kindness. Well and healed and strong. May you be. May you hold your struggles with compassion, kindness, all of them. And may you be happy. And wishing happiness for them, that they live with happiness. They now gaze back at you. Imagine their eyes returning your gaze. And they want to wish the same for you. Because they feel your care, they know you care. They also care. And they look at you and they say, may you too be filled with loving kindness. May you too be safe and protected. May you too be well, healed, strong in body. They want this for you. And you take it in. May you hold your struggles and sorrows with a tender compassion. And they gaze at you. May you be happy. May you be truly happy. And taking this in now, if you're comfortable, you can even put your hand on your heart as you've been blessed by the care of this one. And for yourself, with your eyes closed, continue, may I be filled with loving kindness, just as they wish for you. Just as they say, may you be filled with this, they love you. They care about you. May I take this in? May I fill myself with loving kindness amidst it all. And may I stay safe and protected. We do care if we step out in the street and a car is racing by, our body jumps back out of the way because we do care. May I be safe and protected always. May I be well and strong. May I hold my struggles and sorrows with compassion. And may I be happy. May I be happy amidst it all. And as you allow the blessings of loving kindness offered to you from this loved one to come in and offer it to yourself, now envision that you can become a beacon, a lighthouse of loving kindness, so that you extend loving kindness through your gaze and your soft eyes, through your touch, through your heart and words, to all that you meet. As the praise and blame and gain and loss, all the changes of the world, joys and sorrows arise, you become the one who offers kindness to beings that you encounter. And feel yourself extending this kindness to those close to you and those you love. May all of you be held in kindness, filled with it. Safe, protected, well and healed. Feel the loving kindness spread from you. May you be happy, all you dear ones. And now sense that the whole earth with all these beings upon it are part of your family. They're part of someone's family, and it turns out it's yours. And extend your metta, loving kindness, care. May all beings feel from me loving kindness. And may it awaken that kindness in their own hearts. May beings be safe and well. Held in compassion, all their struggles and sorrows. And may beings everywhere find peace and happiness. And keeping the sense of loving kindness, let your eyes open gently. And feel how we're connected, even through this electronic screen, the pixels on the screen and the electronic web that connects us, which is just another web, like the web of the atmosphere and the web of life itself, that we're in this together. And what better thing to do, what better way to move through this human life than to love well. So you can practice this. There's all kinds of versions. I'm sure Search Inside Yourself has some versions on your website, and Sharon Salzberg and Tara Brach and George Mumford and, you know, all over Thich Nhat Hanh. There's beautiful versions, and use them and listen to them and practice them. And like watering the plants and the seeds in the garden, as you water and tend, the access to loving kindness and care just grows in you. It becomes more and more who you are.
Thank you so much, dear Jack. Thank you. So now perhaps we can just open it up for any of our participants, anyone who's listening. If you have reflections you'd like to share, or questions or comments, you could enter into the chat bar or the Q&A, and we'll be having some coming in also from the live stream. But I have at least one here, and I'd encourage anyone, it can be a question, it can be a reflection, an observation, anything. But thank you, Marco, for this question, which comes back to something we had talked about earlier. So the question here is, Dear Jack, how do you see we consolidate the division that arises in the heart from doing our best to wish well to someone, actively causing us harm and pain, while also having to protect ourselves from the harm they're causing, which in turn may harm them as well? And this comes from a recent personal event that Marco says he had experienced.
What's beautiful, Marco, is that you don't offer a question, you offer wisdom and an answer. I believe Shakespeare said at one line, he said, I am a man of parts. And we have these different parts. We have the part that was hurt. We have the part that's vulnerable to being hurt and that needs to be protected. You have to care for yourself. And it may mean you never talk to that person again, or it may mean you have to, you know, get a kick-ass lawyer, or it may mean that you have to move away. Who knows what you have? You protect yourself. But there are two ways to protect yourself. One is to act out of anger and hatred and rage, and then who suffers? You both suffer. Or another, as you said so wisely, in, you know, that this person, it causes harm to them as well. And you see that, and you realize how much pain there is in the whole thing. And you say, all right, I will not add to it. I will protect myself, as you say, in whatever way necessary, but I won't let myself go so low as to hate them in return. And that way your heart, somehow, like Mahagosananda, after everything he lost, he became the light of Cambodia for people to say, how do we start again? We protect ourselves, and then it's never too late to begin again. So thank you for the wisdom in what you say.
Thank you. Marco is one of our teachers in Estonia. So we have a comment, Jack, from Margot, I see here. She says, thank you. I'm familiar with loving kindness. What is new and very important to me is that it's okay to have other feelings as well. Like today, I'm sick and unhappy, and I feel okay about it now.
That's, again, it's really beautiful to listen, because more often than not, when people ask a thoughtful question like this, they also provide the wisdom and care, understanding in their own words. It's totally okay to have other feelings. Loving kindness doesn't say, I shouldn't have all kinds of feelings, including hate and fear and disappointment and grumpiness and, outrage and all of those things. Can you meet those two with loving kindness? And you say it, I feel okay about it all now. And okay means that you don't have to pick them up and continue to tell the story and believe them and act on them. Because then in some way you lose the agency of your heart. You lose who you really are, that courage to love underneath it all. But you can say, yes, this is perfectly human, And I can hold all this with a kindness without trying to change it or make it different.
Mm-hmm.
People confuse a spiritual practice also. Somehow I've got to, make myself better, like it's some grim duty. All right, I go to therapy and I work out in the gym and I have a good diet and I'm doing all things I'm supposed to do. Now I've got to do the damn loving kindness meditation. But it's not about that. It really is. And your question and your answer in it say this. It's really about kindness itself, kindness toward everything, because those thoughts of pain or grief or sickness or anger or anxiety, they need your kindness too.
Mm. Yeah, Jack, there's a related question from Natalia, who's also one of our teachers in London, I believe, which is about, are there other practices? She thanks you for the metta meditation, the loving kindness meditation, and then asks, could you please suggest another practice to cultivate kindness?
There are many other practices. On my own website, jackkornfield.com, there's a practice of forgiveness with a lot of teaching around what forgiveness is and what it isn't, and how to use it to safeguard yourself and to safeguard your heart. There's practices of compassion. There's practices of joy amidst it all. So you can find those not only in the free offerings that I have, but in many, many other places. And for those of you, since it's now been your teachers who've kind of offered their words and questions and wisdom, these are things that are beautiful to offer for your whole community. Here's a suite of 6 or 8 or 10 beautiful practices led by different people in different ways. Find which ones speak to you, which are the ones that at this time in your life, buoy up and open your heart. And it might change. You might do metta for a time and then you realize I really need to do a practice of peace and equanimity and feel the vastness of space and time. And like the Native American Ojibwe say, sometimes I go about pitying myself when all the while I'm being carried by great winds across the sky, to have a vast perspective.
Yes, yes. So we have such a few more really powerful and related questions, Jack, from our friend Janae, who's also one of our certified teachers working in the San Francisco Department of Public Health, and also leading our work and training trainers there in these practices. But she has a very beautiful observation. Thank you for this, Janae. She writes, thank you for sharing the Cleveland Clinic video. We opened the trauma training at San Francisco Department of Public Health with this video. It's very tenderizing. And she writes, my greatest challenge is to hold myself in loving kindness. Any suggestions for deepening compassion to myself?
That's also a really important question, and kind of it's a tender one in some way when you think, how could it be that we don't hold ourselves with the same kindness we do for others? Because here you are, you're working, in the San Francisco Department of Public Health, you're caring for all these people. I think I'll leave out one of them. She's really not worthy of my attention.
That would never happen.
Never happen. And there was, you probably heard this, there was this famous dialogue with the Dalai Lama that we had decades ago, Sharon Salzberg and myself and others, I think, meeting with him and asking him about the lack of self-kindness and asking him about self-hatred that's so common when people start to meditate. And he got all confused because apparently there's no word for self-hatred in Tibet, in the Tibetan language. And finally, with a lot of coaching to translate it, he looked up with such tenderness and he said, but this is a mistake. Why would someone do this? And we had to explain the kind of conditioning that people get. So you're not just asking this question for yourself. You're holding the challenge for many, many. And it's why I began the metta by picturing someone you care about and then having them offer you loving kindness or compassion through their eyes. So I would say, carry on with that. You know, picture the people. You can even surround yourself. My beloved Trudy Goodman, who's also a teacher, my wife and colleague and founder of Inside LA, she does a metta that she calls the jelly roll, where she has the people that most care about you all surround you in a circle and beam their care to you, even though it's a little bit hard to take in how much they care about you and how they wish you well. So play with it.
Yeah.
Practice it. And do it repeatedly. Put your hand on your heart, listen to them and say, little by little, can I let this seep in? Rich, what were you going to say?
It's so beautiful. And it's such a wonderful, I'd never heard of that meditation before, the jelly roll meditation. And of course it comes from Trudy because she's so wonderful like that.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that, Jack. We have a few other really, I think, poignant questions. So moving it now also to practicing kindness from practicing kindness to people we know, but then when we think about institutions and organizations. So we've got this question from Taran, which says, it's easier to practice kindness with people you know, but harder with institutions and organizations. Following the Glasgow climate change COP, the experts forecast we're still on the path to extinction. How can you find kindness practice with the invisible, faceless governments and corporations, mainly from rich countries, whose interests are to keep the status quo?
It's a deep question, and I think we all carry some piece of that question if we're paying attention, even in the slightest bit, to the dilemmas of climate change and how much suffering that it's going to cause, and it already is, especially to the billions who are the most vulnerable among us, the refugees and the desertification of land that used to be fertile, and, you know, the rising oceans and all of the extinction of species. So a friend of mine and a colleague, Wes Nisker, Scoop Nisker, went to visit Gary Snyder. Gary's now in his 90s and as a Pulitzer Prize winning poet who wrote Earth Household 50 years ago, was one of the early poetic environmentalists, visionary bioregional founders of that kind of vision of how we care for the earth, and said, Gary, it's 50 years later and you see what's happening, the loss of species and the terrible effects of climate change. What advice do you have for us? And he paused and he said, don't feel guilty. Don't feel guilty. If you want to save it, don't save it out of guilt, out of anger and hatred, out of anxiety and fear, because these are the very things that have made it happen: fear and anger and anxiety and greed and hatred and guilt. He said, if you want to save it because you love it. It's the only force that can go up against institutions and up against ignorance and attachment and greed and hatred. The only comparable force is the force of love. The force that lets mothers lift cars off their children. That in the end, it's the force that connects us all. So yes, the institutions can cause tremendous harm. They're made up of, and they operate in a kind of system that's very hard to change because they have their own life, but they were constructed by human beings. And all of us know that no amount of computers and internet and biotechnology and AI and nanotechnology and all the other stuff, and none of these institutions are going to stop continuing warfare and hatred and racism and climate change and all of these sufferings of humanity, because they're rooted in the human heart. And so this is the great power that you find in yourself when you open to it. And that says, yes, now respond to that climate change summit and what it did and all that it didn't do. And bring that force to lift the cars off the children, to do what you can, but not out of guilt or greed or anxiety or fear. Do it because you love it, and inspire other people to love it in the same way, to remind them. And that really is the source of the power that we need at this time.
Thank you, Jack. We have a comment from Bill Green here, which says the James Baldwin quote touched me. Once one stops clinging to the hate, how does one deal with the pain? How do you bring kindness and compassion to the wounds? Which is very much what you're saying. And
yes, and again, the beautiful truth that in the question is the answer. You bring kindness and compassion to the wounds. We are wounded. We're wounded as a culture. We're wounded as a species, as human beings in many ways. We've forgotten that we belong to each other, as Mother Teresa would say. And it's a deep wound. There's so many, there's pains. And a lot of those pains we project out. What Baldwin speaks of when we can't deal with our pain is we put it on others. It's the Mexicans, it's the immigrants, it's the Asians, it's the Blacks, it's the brown, but we could also turn it to it's the institutions, it's the Democrats, it's the Republicans, it's the, crazy liberals, it's the crazy conservatives, and so forth, because we can't sit with the measure of pain that's given to us and hold it with a tender heart, and then say, yes, we all share in this pain of the world, and we can meet it with tenderness, compassion. This is our humanity, and with the courage of love. And that was all there so beautifully in the question that had its own answer woven into it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And there are so many questions and comments. It's hard to be able to address them in the very little.
You get to do that yourself, Rich, for the whole year ahead.
Exactly. So that I was going to say something similar, because some of the questions are about how to bring this to the workplace. Our friend Sherab Zangmo from Bhutan is writing in saying, how do we bring this to people who might be resistant or quiet or reflective? And I would like to answer that actually, which is very much with this idea that we're named after, which is search inside yourself. It's not in search inside somebody else. It's search inside yourself, like cultivate that heart of kindness and compassion. And that's where it starts in the workplace. And that's where it starts, I think, for those who may need it, but not, aware of that at the moment, but starting with one's own self and then offering.
It's contagious too,
it's contagious,
actually.
Yeah. So I wanted to just share, Jack, briefly, and then perhaps we can close with, if you could just guide us with a brief practice. But I wanted to share just for the participants, if you want to connect with us, we sent also a link to Jack's website, which you'll see in the chat. And then here at the Institute, if you did want to connect, everyone here who's registered will get a free copy of the ebook Practice Kindness. And so you will have research and different practices there in that ebook format. We also have some upcoming courses. And if you can just see here on the slide, anyone today, if you just enter Practice Kindness as a discount code, you'll also get a 25% discount to any of our upcoming courses, which you see here and which you can find on the SIYLI.org/calendar link that you see here. And you can find us on the usual channels as well. If you're not familiar with us, you can always find us here in these channels. So with that, Jack, I would love to just invite you and first of all, I want to thank everybody for being here today and practicing kindness together on World Kindness Day. And because it is practice oriented, we wanted to just invite one last practice, Jack. We have about 2 or 3 minutes left. If you wouldn't mind just guiding us in a closing practice on kindness together.
Well, first I read a little passage from Guillaume Apollinaire, who writes, "Now and then it's good to pause in our pursuit of happiness and just be happy." It's even practice, which is important, and we, it changes us and we benefit by it. Where are we going in the end is where we are already. We're going here. This amazing day, as E. Cummings says, the leafing greenly spirits of trees and the blue true dream of sky and everything that is natural, that is infinite, that is yes. We get lost in our minds. It's a kind of wicked maze in there. Let it go for a bit. Take a walk, talk to a tree. They listen, actually, they're connected to you. I promise you, it's true. We know this not just from the Wood Wide Web and all the new science research, but it gets even, the new science is extraordinary with plants. They listen to each other, they talk to each other, not just trees, but little plants do. I mean, there's incredible research going on about how we are interwoven in a field of life that's responding. And when you bring your happiness alive, yes, the world has a huge measure of suffering, but when the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu were together on this project, the Book of Joy that's coming out, how can you be happy with so much suffering in your lives? South Africa, Tibet. Dalai Lama said, so much has been taken from me. I can't go home. I can't be with the people of Tibet. The things have been burned, destroyed. Why should I let anyone take my happiness? So let yourself be quiet for a moment and realize that you can be this. It's not the Dalai Lama or Archbishop Tutu. Bless them, they're fantastic. But it's you, and you actually can be that beacon for yourself, for the people and the animals and the plants and the life. You say, yes, I'm in it with you. Let's do this in a beautiful way. Let yourself reflect and feel you're not alone. Actually, we're with you. You've got your back through all that you're going. We're in this together. We're holding hands. Feel it. Feel this connection. Breathe with it. Life is cheering you on to be as beautiful and miraculous as you are. So thank you, Rich. And like Search Inside Yourself, I have a lot of also wonderful trainings and things like that. And if there are views to those who listen, look on my website. Just a great pleasure to join you in the super good work that you do, Rich, and all of you at Search Inside Yourself.
Well, thank you, Jack. And yes, please connect with Jack. And, Jack, of course, you're a friend and also my teacher and mentor. So it's just beautiful to be joined together with you and this community and this practice. And yes, may we all invite kindness as we move through our day and our lives going forward. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.